Yeah, so I think the circumstances to the war were like, I mean, the basic ones are known to everyone. You had the Indian government actually like basically doing an outreach to like taking the bus to Lahore in 1998, and the relations had gotten better and stuff. But then there was also, and I view this in parallel, right? Because there is no point in viewing this what happened first, what happened after. Pokhran was happening. It was simmering, right? India tested its nuclear capabilities. America imposed sanctions on India, but India said that Pakistan is ready, and Pakistan literally within a week or 10 days tested its own nuclear missiles. So 2 weeks, yeah. And then clearly, so that was the thing. So all that was leading to the thing, leading to that. There was a clear disconnect in Pakistan within the top military establishment and the civilian establishment. Nawaz Sharif, but I don't buy the theories that Nawaz Sharif has spouted. I think he must have had a vague idea, or at least that this was being planned. He claims that he had no clue and Musharraf just went and did Kargil. But I don't think that is the case. I do, however, might concede the thing that Musharraf might have not been, Nawaz Sharif might have not been that powerful as he was when he won the election and so forth. On the other side, India was facing a very tumultuous time politically because Vajpayee's government, the 13-month government, which initially had the support of Jayalalitha and others, was under sort of thing, and we under threat, and we were in the caretaker government sort of mode. And at that time, Kargil happens, where initially the Indian Patrolling Party is sent, and the craziest thing about Kargil was, I don't think India knew what it was dealing with for the longest time. Were we dealing with a few intruders? Were we dealing with, jihadis that come, or mujahids, the term that was used, that come across the border? Or were we dealing with a full-scale operation where the Pakistani army was involved as well? And as we found out, there were parts of the Pakistani army that were involved, and that's what made it worse, how we approached the war. So that was the lead up to the war, with all these sort of jigsaw puzzle, severe instability, India almost staring down an election, and then with a caretaker government in place, the Kargil War happens. So I think the first thing, like I said, was probably it was like in I think May the 3rd or so forth, when there was a Pakistani intrusion that was reported by the shepherds. And then the key was, in that first week of May, Indian Army patrols were sent out, and there were soldiers that were captured and killed subsequently, and multiple patrols were sent out and they were missing. And then the shelling starts in a week of these being reported. And as you know, in summer and winter, there is a sort of it was an unwritten rule between the troops and Indian troops and the Pakistani troops about when they would recede and when they would come back to certain posts. And then there were, I think, within a week itself, there were multiple infiltrations that happened. I think what was interesting was India then mobilized military forces, mobilized regiments from across the country to the Kargil, Dras, Mushko Valley sectors and so forth. And the Air Force, and we forget sometimes, like, right, people are so focused on just the role of the army, and both the army and the Air Force, that the Air Force started shelling in May itself. Last week of May, I think May 26th or something, if I'm not mistaken, is when they started. And the whole Nachiketa episode happened actually a day after, 27th May. So that is sort of the initial part of it. And then the 1st June is a very critical date, because Pakistan then started shelling the highway, the national highway, one between Kashmir and Ladakh, or that connected Srinagar and Leh, which was said to be like the chicken's neck, that if you break that off, you can actually cut Kashmir from the rest of India and so forth. So that is I would like to pause to there, and then we'll talk about what happened in the war. But that is what the follow-up war, and I think June 1st was the peak escalation. Mohal, correct me if I'm wrong, when they tried to bomb National Highway 1.
I think they had started to bomb National Highway 1, but as they started, we started discovering the first clashes with patrols were around like 8th of May. I mean, interestingly, on 10th of May, at that time, we hadn't discovered the whole level of intrusion. What happened is there was a official visit by the Chief of Army Staff, VP Malik, to Poland and Czech Republic. So I mean, he didn't know the severity of the situation, so he went ahead with the trip. And like, I mean, later on it was criticized, but at that time he said like he wasn't aware of the full, otherwise he might have not, I mean, these are not his words, but I'm just guessing, he might not have gone to the Czech Republic. So by the time he comes back on the 18th of May, I mean, it is escalated pretty much. I mean, first it was like, oh, there are just few infiltrators on few peaks in Batalik sector. Then if you can bring up the map, like the second map, we have intrusions in 5 different sectors, all the way from we have like Dras, Mushko, Batalik, even all the way north up to Turtuk, which is basically just south of the Siachen Glacier. So yeah, I mean, we discovered uh, intrusions, and I think as the intrusions were detected, the Pakistanis started shelling the National Highway 1 in May itself, and also the forward positions as the soldiers were who were coming under intense fire, because at that time we didn't know how much soldiers were there, and many times the local level commanders, they were under pressure to get rid of the infiltrators. So in many tragic circumstances, many search parties went up without proper support, without proper reconnaissance, without proper acclimatization in many cases, because this sector was just a brigade level strength, and there were not a lot of troops, so troops had to be brought in from the valley. I mean, India had luck on its side that the Zojila Pass, which connected Kashmir to Ladakh and even Kargil, had opened up early, so we could bring in troops. Even a couple of battalions were brought down who were deinducting from Siachen. They were just thrown into the battle like at a much reduced strength. So I mean, the first few days of the war didn't go well. I mean,
yeah, and
up to the end of May.
I'm just going to add something. Sorry, Mohal, didn't mean to cut you, but I think acclimatization was another big thing, right? I don't think our troops had enough time for acclimatization as well, because I remember, and this is going to be very silly that I'm going to quote this, but it actually needs to be like, and this is where I give credit to Indian movie makers and documentary makers to bring this fact out, because this is not actually spoken, like people like you and I will actually read about it in, 3 of us will read about it in books and so forth, but many people won't. And this is a dialogue that I think JP Datta deliberately included in LOC Kargil's movie, where they said the terrain, normally in a mountainous terrain, the ratio is 6-1, where 6 soldiers of ours die compared to their 1. Kargil, the terrain is so treacherous, it might be 10-1, where 10 of our soldiers to 1 the ratio. I mean, the Indian Army was battling some insane ratios, and if you guys think the Indian Air Force could go around and shell, India had taken a decision not to cross the line of control. So imagine the Air Force having to do that by not crossing the line of control. I mean, it was quite insane what our folks managed to do.
Yeah, I think in the plains, the standard military doctrine says you need to have a 3-1 attacker to defend the ratio. Now in the mountains, it became it's usually like up to 10:1. So I think like one of the brigade commanders during the war, like Devendra Singh, like he mentioned that when VP Malik visited, came back from the Poland visit, like he insisted that at least we be 15-1. So a lot of the troops had to be brought in. I mean, initially we suffered a lot of casualties, especially in the Dras sector around Tololing, with tragic circumstances where soldiers were unprepared or not fully staffed. I mean, many of the brigades were also denuded, because see, this is also the height of militancy. Like militancy had been going in for like probably 7, 8, 9 years, right? I mean since the early 90s. So the whole orientation of the troops was all during insurgency in the valley. So there were not it was just a brigade defending a huge stretch of area in Kargil, and there was not enough troops. A lot of troops had to be brought in from other areas who had to be acclimatized, and many times they didn't even have enough weapons or clothing in their cases.